Good evening. It's now 5:05 p.m. and the regular session of the Planning Commission, the City of Lancaster. Please come to order. Tonight, Commissioner Burden will lead us in an invocation. Commissioner Tufts will lead us in the pledge. So if you'd all please stand. Thank you. Have the roll call, please.
Chairman Vos.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Harvey.
Present.
Commissioner Burden.
Present.
Commissioner Derryberry.
Present.
Commissioner Moore.
Present.
Commissioner Tufts.
Present.
And Commissioner Underwood is absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And welcome to everyone is here tonight. Just to give you a little background on how the commission operates here. Any person who would wish to address the commission on any agendized item is asked to fill out a speaker's card, and as this gentleman is doing, drop it off there on my left, your right, and once the items are called, we will then call upon you to offer your comments. Each individual speaker typically gets 3 minutes. The applicants, however, if there are any who wish to address the commission, have an opportunity to explain their project. Tonight, I don't expect there will be any, but there may be. Our first item tonight is approval of the minutes of the special meeting of June 12th, 2023. Go ahead.
I move to approve the minutes from the special meeting of June 12, 2023.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes 6-0. The next 3 items on our agenda are new public hearings. So without objection, we'll open the public hearing on item number 2, which is conditional use permit 23-003. This is a project that Ms. Brakey will give us a briefing on.
Thank you, Chair Vos, members of the Planning Commission. The first item before you tonight is conditional use permit number 23003, a proposal for the construction and operation of a 80-foot tall monopine wireless communications facility. The proposed facility would be located on the site of the existing Love and Grace Fellowship Church within the Rural Residential 1 zone located at 2052 West Avenue L. The exact location of the proposed monopine is shown in orange. This is a 40-foot by 40-foot lease area located on an undeveloped portion of the site. This is located behind the developed church area on site, which is outlined in green. These elevations show the proposed monopine along with the proposed equipment enclosure below, consisting of a 6-foot high CMU block wall. The propagation map before you shows existing coverage on the left and coverage with the proposed facility on the right. The red circle indicates the approximate location of the project site. Bright green and yellow show areas which need improvement, and dark green shows area with good coverage. You can see that the addition of the site makes a substantial difference to coverage in the area. This slide shows photo simulations of the proposed monopine with views taken from the north along 21st Street West on the left and from the east along Avenue L on the right. In closing, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 2312, approving conditional use permit number 23003 to allow for the construction and operation of an 80-foot tall monopine wireless communications facility with associated equipment at Love and Grace Christian Fellowship Church, located in the Rural Residential 1 zone at 2052 West Avenue L. Myself and the applicant are both available if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. As I recall, this property had a conditional use permit placed upon it some years ago for an expansion of their church facility. I don't recall if that was ever pursued, however.
Offhand, I'm not familiar with that proposal. Under the current proposal before you, the development would not impact the current church area.
All right, very good. Yeah, I think that conditional use permit was 10 years ago or maybe longer, so it's long since expired, I believe. So, all right, but this is in the southeast corner, a little 50-foot square.
The southwest corner,
Or
that's correct.
southwest.
I can show this orange square shown on the right.
It's a little hard to see on our little monitor up here. Yeah, all right, thank you. Members, anyone have any questions or comments? No? Do we have speakers on this item?
No, sir, no speaker.
None?
None.
All right then, thank you. All right then, so without objection, we'll close the public hearing and consider a motion.
A motion to adopt resolution number 23-12, approving the conditional use permit number 23003 to allow for construction and operation of 80-foot tall monopine wireless communication facility with associate equipment at Love and Grace Christian Fellowship Church, located at RR1 zone at 2052 West Avenue L.
Thank you. I have a second, please?
I second.
Thank you. All right, anything further from members? All right then. It's moved and seconded. Please vote. Motion passes 6-0 with one absent. All right, the next public hearing is on conditional use permit 23-011 and variance number 23-002. So without objection, the public hearing is open on this item. This is an application by the City of Lancaster. Ms. Swain?
Chairman Vos and members of the commission, before you tonight is conditional use permit number 23-011 and variance number 23-002 for proposed auto mall signage. The Lancaster Auto Mall is developed on the original 49 acres at the northwest corner of 10th Street West and Avenue K8 and has slightly expanded to include an additional dealership on the northeast corner of 10th Street West and Avenue K8. In total, there are 7 dealerships selling 11 different car brands, along with the Avis and Budget Rental Car. In order to increase the auto mall's visibility to motorists and promote the dealerships and brands available, the city is proposing to install a total of 12 pylon signs, starting just north of Avenue K8 and ending before the existing auto mall monument sign as part of a capital improvement project. The signs would be a maximum of 25 feet in height, as measured from the ground to the top of the sign, would be spaced every 70 feet along the freeway frontage, with the brand logo display area measuring 54 square feet. The signs would be internally illuminated with a static display. The display area would be placed on top of a stainless steel column that is encased in an aluminum column cover and painted in a satin finish with a clear coat anti-graffiti covering. Inset in the column structure would be a color-changing programmable LED array. Landscaping would be installed at the base of each pylon sign. The display, Section 17.12.160B2 permits the installation of pylon signs within the commercial zones, subject to certain conditions, including a 12-foot maximum height unless a conditional use permit is obtained, one pylon sign for each site with a minimum of 150 feet of frontage along a major arterial, 15-foot separation distance from interior lot lines, and installation of landscaping. All of the parcels within the auto mall have a street side frontage that is at least 150 feet in length. However, only 8 of the lots have frontages along a major arterial. In order to provide all dealerships and brands with equal visibility to passing motorists, the pylon signs for each brand would be placed along the Antelope Valley frontage of the auto mall. This equates to the 4 lots with current frontage along the freeway, the 4 lots with frontage along 10th Street West, and 4 lots within the interior of the auto mall. The variance is being requested to locate all of the signs in an area with the best visibility and to increase the total number of pylon signs that would be allowed from 8 to 12. Staff is recommending that the Commission adopt Resolution 23-13, approving conditional use permit number 23-11 and variance number 23-002 to allow for the installation of 12 25-foot tall pylon signs along the western boundary of the Lancaster Auto Mall. I'm available to answer any questions if you have them.
May well be. Thank you. Do you have any speaker cards on this item?
No speaker cards.
None? All right, thank you. Members, any questions or comments?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
All right, Ms. Swain, I do have a few questions for you.
Go for it.
So did I hear it wrong? Who's paying for this?
So it's a capital improvement project on behalf of the Lancaster Auto Mall.
Okay, so it's a joint venture with,
Correct.
amongst them. All right, thank you. And then you mentioned landscaping. I know right now with Caltrans, we're trying to xeriscape. Are we going to xeriscape this, or are we going to put plants and trees and, or shrubs?
So the landscaping would be around the base of the signs, and it would be drought tolerant in accordance with the city's standards, so drought tolerant, native, low-lying, and it would all be located within the city's landscape easement of the auto mall. It would not be within the Caltrans right-of-way.
Okay. All right, I was just, I don't know, for me, because we're all moving towards xeriscaping water issues. I mean, we've been very fortunate this year to have a little more excess rain. But have we looked into maybe doing xeriscaping or something more decorative? I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. You look at things, you know, driving through Las Vegas and parts of Arizona. We may want to look into that.
So the landscaping would be the drought tolerant, and it would be designed to be compatible with what grows well in this area, and uses minimal amounts of water but is still attractive. A lot of the plants that grow in Arizona, it's a different desert climate. So I've seen some of the really lush. Unfortunately, those don't grow well here, but it would be similar to some of the other xeriscaping that we're doing here in the city.
Okay, because that Avenue L where they have the pine trees and the boulders and all that, it just, it seems like it's a little excessive.
Yeah, there will be no pine trees near the signs. It's likely to be low-lying, desert tolerant.
Okay, all right, and then they'll never change the signs other than if it's a different manufacturer. It'll stay simple, it won't have
Right, so
anything to
they won't
distract
be
drivers.
moving displays. They'll be lit at night, but it's not going to be like the
Yeah, I
the
saw that.
digital
Looked
displays.
nice, yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
they'll be fixed.
Okay.
If a dealership changes, obviously, the dealership
That'll
would,
happen.
you know, be replaced.
Okay. But they won't change and put up different ads or anything to distract drivers? Okay, all right, that's all I have, thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Swain, I actually have one question with regard to the lumens. who controls, is that some sort of ordinance that we, the city or county, the lumens that it's illuminated with? Because sometimes it can be blinding at night. Like when you go towards the mall in Palmdale today, if it's night, it's sort of blinding, although distracting because, you know, that's not stationary, but in this case, these being stationary. But can we control the lumens or?
So we would be able to control the lumens. They would be similar to some of the other signs in that general area in terms of brightness, but Caltrans also has lighting standards for signs along the freeway, which would be complied
Really?
with. They do.
Not that you can answer for Palmdale, but okay, understood.
We went and looked.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else have comments? All right, and no speaker cards, right? Okay, very good. Thank you, Ms. Swain. So it's appropriate then to close the public hearing without objection and consider a motion.
I move to adopt resolution number 23-13, approving conditional use permit number 23-011 and variance number 23-002 to allow for the installation of 12 25-foot tall pylon signs along the western boundary of the Lancaster Auto Mall, adjacent to the Antelope Valley Freeway, with an increase in permitted number of signs and reduction of spacing standards in the commercial planned development zone, APNs 3125-024-013, 3124-024-014, and 3125-024-015, and final 3125-024-038.
I will second the motion.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything further? Please vote. Motion passes 6-0, one absent. The next hearing is a public hearing on conditional use permit 23-009, and for the record, we've received one piece of correspondence on this from Ms. Niblick.
Chair Vos, I'm going to
Go
recuse
ahead.
myself on this matter. My family has a financial interest on a property really close to this.
All right, very good. So Commissioner Derryberry is recusing on this. Thank you. We're waiting for you. Thank you. Ms. Campagna is the presenter on this, I believe.
Yes, it is. Good
Go
evening,
right
Chairman
ahead.
Bose, members of the Planning Commission. This item before you is conditional use permit number 23-009. The proposed project is located at 42212 12th Street West at the the northeast corner of 10th Street West and Avenue L12. It is located in a multi-tenant building. It's called Primo Plaza, and there are 8 units in that center, and the applicant will be in unit number 8. The proposed project is to operate a cannabis retail store. Only adult customers over the age of 21 and qualified patients and primary caregivers over the age of 18 would be allowed inside of the building. The hours of operation are from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. So when a customer goes in, they would go into the front door, which is highlighted in red, and then into the secured lobby where the staff member will go ahead and use the ID scanner for verification. Once verified, then they would be buzzed into the retail store area. And in that retail store area, the ratio from staff member to customer is 1 staff member to 3 customers. There'll be 1 security guard at all times. There'll be cameras interior and exterior of the building. For odor filtration, the products are kept in a tightly sealed bag within the rooms with odor filtration. And the project is conditioned to have an odor filtration system. And if any odor is detected outside, the CUP could be up for revocation. There is a 5% surcharge of gross receipts of cannabis and cannabis products. In addition, this is not within 600 feet of sensitive uses. And there is a 1,000-foot radius buffer from any other retail establishments if this project does get approved. In conclusion, staff recommends that Planning Commission adopt resolution number 2317, approving conditional use permit number 23-009 to allow for the retail sale of cannabis within an existing multi-tenant building at 42212 10th Street West, Unit 8. The staff and applicant are available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do I have speakers on this item?
No, sir, no speakers.
No speakers?
No speaker.
So if my memory serves correctly, the city council amended the ordinance 1743 in 2018, 2019 to include retail cannabis sales and limit and instructed the city manager to limit the number of retail locations within the city. Am I correct on that?
That is correct.
Okay. So it's our obligation, as we've all taken on the responsibility of administering Section 17 of the municipal code as well as Section 5 as it relates to this type of an operation. However, I'm curious, I am familiar with the ordinance since this commission was well involved with the original creation and review of the ordinance before the city council amended it. So the applicant's requirements, they have to meet a certain level prior to the commission ever seeing an application. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And can you give us kind of a broad brush review of what those qualifications are?
It is an incredibly lengthy application process with information related to the business, the operations, a background of the partners and the investors affiliated with the establishment, as well as a very detailed security plan, community benefit, and a variety of other things. This particular application, the applicant is already, they already operate a facility, a manufacturing facility in the city, and has been a responsible applicant with no issues at their existing facility. Their request for an additional CUP is at a new location to further expand their operations. So they have been fully vetted from the city's standpoint for the manufacturing component, as well as for this newest application. They have been vetted for a second time to ensure compliance and all regulatory compliance for both, well, not both, but for this establishment. And they are in good standing with the city currently.
And is it correct that this company, Tradecraft Farms, also has facilities in other jurisdictions in the state
That is correct.
and other jurisdictions in other states?
I don't have a full inventory of all of their locations, but I do know from what they have shared with us that they are operating in other areas in LA County.
An internet search showed that under this name, whether it's the same applicant or not, I don't know, operating in the state of Maine and as well as the state of Oklahoma. So I don't know if it's the same operation. It doesn't really matter. I just thought, you know, you can find almost anything you want on Google, right? All right. Do you know, Ms. De La Cruz, what the city manager has established for the number of licenses for retail operations in the city?
So to clarify and give a little bit of background, when the city first adopted the revised ordinance that would allow for retail sales, the city council deferred the implementation of said ordinance to the city manager. There was a first phase implementation of the retail component that allowed the city manager to identify those operators that were currently operating and mostly doing manufacturing, and gave them the opportunity to apply for a retail establishment. Many of those licensees did not pursue a retail license given the security concerns with having a retail establishment at their existing locations. We therefore, we the city manager's office, reevaluated the policy and the implementation of the ordinance and opened up the retail component to other applicants, so long as they went through the conditional use permit process and made it a discretionary application. And this is the first application that the city has received for retail. So there currently is no cap or limit. The limit is more along the lines of the distance requirement from one establishment to another, which would be a 1,000-foot radius. But there is no maximum per se at this point.
So there is no variance or distance impacts other than the standards set in the code.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Members, you have anything? No? All right then.
I do.
Go ahead.
So I remember we went through a production facility, adding on another one to the east side of Lancaster. And in there was a gentleman that came in and was talking about the smell that he was being impacted by in his residence. I mean, in here, the conditional use permit 23009, item number 24 says detection of cannabis odor. So basically, I know there is a restaurant down there at the end of the building, which would impact that a bit. What are we looking for, or have we gone out and seen that gentleman's property? Have we sent out an enforcement unit or someone to go check on that yet? What are we doing now in the city of Lancaster to ensure that this is not becoming an issue with residents and or businesses where they're being impacted by this? Are we doing anything?
Yeah, so we did follow up with that resident,
Okay.
and what we did is we have our code enforcement manager who works on various situations like that if they come about. He actually went out, he spoke to the manager at the facility to remind them about the requirements that they have to fulfill. He didn't see anything that was out of place or, that they shouldn't have. I also followed up with the resident to make sure that they understood that, we were following up and we were, making sure that we follow all of our protocol. But that is basically the standard practice. So if someone calls us or if there's an issue, we go out there immediately. We verify that everyone is in compliance, and if there is an issue, then we make sure to follow up with that.
So everything was in compliance when
Yes,
you went out
it
there?
was.
So,
Yes.
okay. Do we have, and I'll ask, this is probably a strange question, but any way of detection or detecting a level of the odor?
Not necessarily. I mean, it really boils down to being a good neighbor. And when we receive calls, it's mostly from neighbors or from individuals in the neighborhood. We've also received calls, and I've personally gone out and on a couple of times where we receive we're tipped off that there's an odor, and I go and I don't smell anything at all. Sometimes there's stronger smells from some of the restaurants. So it's hard to detect. I mean, it's a distinct odor, and sometimes it's that, and if so, we are proactive about it. But if it's not that odor, then we just really have to gauge it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But Commissioner Tufts does raise a good point. Is there something like that's out there in the market, something like a gas chromatograph or mass spectrometer that can measure anything like that? from a smell perspective? Because I do recall the gentleman mentioning that in our last meeting. And so I was concerned in the last meeting and had asked you all to go out and take a look at that. But with regard to that one, there's a fundamental difference. It was within the distance, and we were asking for a distance waiver on that one, which in this case, we're not asking for a distance waiver, that we're going to meet the 1,000-foot ordinance, right?
That's correct, 600 feet from sensitive uses.
Right. So I guess my question is, circling back, is there something that perhaps that staff can research going forward, especially in those cases where some of the applicants are asking us to provide, a distance waiver, and we all know how I love distance waivers, not. So, so is that something that perhaps you can take an action to look into something like that, something that measures, like I said, either a mass spectrometer, gas chromatograph, something like that?
We can definitely look into it. I don't know, but we can do a little bit of research and see what's available, what's on the market.
That's all that I ask, in fairness to the public.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, isn't it typical that any kind of potential impact from any kind of an operation that a neighbor may feel is inappropriate or generally complaint-driven? So if it is, the typical procedure is code enforcement gets involved, site inspections are generated, and so forth. I mean, I personally have raised issues about odor coming from some manufacturing facilities, cannabis manufacturing facilities, I guess you'd say. And in this particular case, if I read the applicant's and detail correctly, this is all pre-packaged goods as opposed to manufacturing, packaging, distribution, that sort of thing. It's all in-house, pre-packaged product, and if I read it correctly, 1 day's supply on site. Is that correct? Is that what I read?
I'll defer to the applicant to determine what the day supply is. But they are tightly sealed before even coming to the store.
Right. Which is a whole lot different than facilities I've visited in Los Angeles. I'll just leave it at that. All right, thank you.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Chairman Vos, so if there's not an inventory, if you will, is what you're saying, that perhaps that also in itself is less conducive to smell emanating?
You know, from what I read on the application and the site plan and the secure location for the product and the venting system and all the rest of it, I mean, under the code, it would appear that, they're right on the line where they're supposed to be and following correctly the proposed ordinance as the ordinance is written. Their proposal meets all the standards, not just the minimum standards. Actually, it appears from, now if you're going to ask me personally what I feel about the sale and utilization of the product, I'll give you an answer that you may not like. Or you and I may agree on.
Yeah, I think you know that already.
But our challenge is these are not personal decisions we have to make, or maybe they are for some people. We're obliged to administer the code, and it would appear that this application, at least from my point of view, meets the standards of the code, notwithstanding my personal feelings about it.
But that does, Ms. De La Cruz, that underscores, I think, that from a requirements or an ordinance perspective, in order to hold the owners their feet to the fire and make sure they're following the rules, we do need to find out if everything passes a sniff test. No pun intended. So.
Understood, Commissioner.
All right. Thank you. Anything further from members? Staff, Ms. Campagna? Staff? All right. And no speaker cards on this?
No speaker cards.
All right, very good. So it would be appropriate then to close the public hearing without objection and consider a motion.
I'll put forward the motion to adopt resolution number 2317, approving conditional use permit number 23-009 to allow for retail sale of cannabis within an existing multi-tenant building at 42212 10th Street West, Unit 8, APN 3128-010-034.
Thank you. A second, please.
A second.
Thank you. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Nothing further. Please vote. Motion passes 5 yeses. Commissioner Derbyshire is recused, and Commissioner Underwood is absent. Yeah, I think she went after him. All right, then, Commissioner Derryberry is returned. We still have a quorum. The next item on our agenda is a new public hearing. It's item number 5, so without objection, we'll open the public hearing on, excuse me, East Side Overlay Zone. The applicant is the City of Lancaster. The public hearing is open. For the record, we've received a number of pieces of correspondence starting late last week and up to and including about 4:30 this afternoon. We've had those all printed, and all the commissioners have had an opportunity to review them prior to this public hearing tonight. We heard from Ms. Rasmussen and Silva, Ms. Shields, Hartano, I believe. Forgive me if I mispronounce names. Bach, Whitler, Casper, Maheta, I think, Maheta. Who else? Osterall. That correct? No, Oster. Okay, what else? Did I miss anyone? Alvarez? Okay, very good. All right, that's it. So we've all had an opportunity to review those. Okay, I'm assuming I have speakers on this tonight? We have a number?
We do. We have 8.
8? Okay,
8 speakers.
good. All right then, the presenter on this tonight is Ms. Campagna, I'm sorry, Chief. Sorry.
So this project before you is the East Side Overlay. The location is bounded by Avenue J to the north, 110th Street East to the east, Avenue L to the south, and 40th Street East to the west. And this is approximately 5,800 acres. So last year, the city analyzed past, current, and proposed development trends, and it revealed that the majority of the development projects in the city are concentrated in the central and western portions of town, while the eastern portion has very few projects. So properties in the eastern portion of the city are predominantly agricultural, vacant, or undeveloped land. The underutilized area of the city could help respond to the high demand of alternative energy and industrial uses looking to build in Lancaster. In order to promote City Council's vision and help vitalize the eastern portion of the city is proposing the East Side Overlay. So an overlay zone is a zoning district which is applied over one or more previously established zoning districts. So for the overlay zone here, it is the RR 2.5 zone with a few R7000 zones on 4th Street East. So the overlay would establish additional stricter standards or criteria for the covered properties in addition to the underlying zoning district. So this is not a zone change, it's just an overlay over the RR 2.5 and the R7000. The overlay would also allow additional new uses like alternative energy and light industrial uses, in addition to the permitted uses in the R 2.5 and R7000 zones. It would have development standards related to parking, height, and noise. Projects abutting or adjacent to an existing residential use would have additional development standards to ensure consistency and compatibility to the existing neighborhood. Note that there are no new projects or no new construction as part of this overlay, and that uses like alternative energy and light industrial uses would require a conditional use permit as part of the East Side Overlay. So here is a timeline of the environmental review. So the notice of preparation went out on October 28th, and it ended on November 28th, and we had a scoping meeting on November 16th. So as part of the NOP and scoping meeting, we had over 160 residents who commented and were also at the scoping meeting. In the beginning of the process, cannabis was a part of the overlay, and it would have required a CUP. But a concern of a lot of the residents were, it doesn't fit in this area. So based on community input and feedback, not only was cannabis removed, but it's prohibited in the East Side Overlay Zone. So the notice availability and draft EIR was out on April 27th until June 12th, and then the final EIR was posted on July 6th. As part of your packet, you also got a revised memo for the final EIR. It's a revised mitigation measure to Bio 2, which is in regards to Joshua trees. So Joshua trees are currently protected under the California Endangered Species Act and as a candidate species for listing. So Fish and Wildlife requires project applicants to obtain an incidental take permit. And if a project is anticipated to adversely impact western Joshua trees, then they would have to get an ITP, which is a mitigation measure in the EIR. In July of this year, the Western Joshua Tree Conservation Act was signed by the governor under Senate Bill 122. This Conservation Act provides applicants the option to pay in lieu mitigation fees per the new section. And given the recent passage of the Conservation Act, mitigation measure Bio 2 and the Lancaster East Side Project final EIR has been revised as followed, as you've seen underlined on that PowerPoint slide. So it would give an additional option to do an in lieu fee or an incidental take permit. In summary, the proposed East Side Overlay would increase flexibility and development potential. In addition, it would encourage new development that would provide economic benefits to the city and its residents. The East Side Overlay ensures that a variety of sites are available for a variety of alternative energy, light industrial users, among others, which would provide employment-generating opportunities. I want to clearly note that there are no new projects for this and that there's no new construction. This is just an overlay in this area. Majority of uses would require CUP, and as part of the process would have notices sent out to the property owners. It would have a public hearing and ultimately would need Planning Commission approval. That concludes staff's presentation. Staff recommends that Planning Commission adopt resolution number 2318, recommending approval to the City Council, the East Side Overlay Zone Text Amendment and certification of the Environmental Impact Report for the East Side Overlay and adoption of the findings.
Thank you. Do you have a slide for the actual uses that could be proposed on these properties by an applicant in the future, potentially?
I don't have a slide, but I can go ahead. There are not many, so I can name them off fairly quickly. Let me just pull them up right now. So in the overlay, you'd be able to have research and developments, alternative energy uses, building and building, trade and related uses, distribution, food manufacturing, light manufacturing, and warehousing. And a prohibited use would be the commercial cannabis facilities.
Prohibited.
That's correct, prohibited.
All right, thank you. All right, members, you have any questions before we hear the speakers? Comments, anything? All right, then. Shall we have the speakers? And just as a reminder, folks, when you have an opportunity to speak, some of us less than young folks sitting up here have some problems hearing people. So speak right into that microphone and use your outside voice. We won't be offended.
Great. Helmuth Carmichael?
Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, thank you. I've been a member of this community for the last 17 years, moved to Lancaster for economic opportunity. I attended West Coast Baptist College, and after attended Antelope Valley College as well as Cal State Bakersfield, I currently am employed at Edwards Air Force Base. I'm extremely concerned about this overlay for the purpose of if I push you about an inch, you don't move very far, you're probably not going to argue with me, and if I push you a full step, you're probably going to have the same response. Why'd you do that? Not a real big argument. If I were to shove you, now all of a sudden I might get you to move 2 or 3 feet, and we're going to have an argument about that. This industrial overlay has the effect of pushing the community an inch, maybe an inch and a half, maybe 2, but it creates a discussion that now business by business, every single conditional use permit would be required to be an argument between the community, the business owners, and the city. The city is placing itself in opposition to its residents in multiple ways. In the vicinity, within half a mile of the closest areas, there are, within actually several hundred feet, there are residential neighborhoods. The current 2 zoning approvals are residential in nature, I believe rural and your typical residential zoning. The schools in the area are both public and private. I'd be happy to set up a fund for any of your children or grandchildren that are currently of school age to attend those schools, should you approve this overlay, for the purpose of showing whether or not you'd be committed to allowing your children to attend, your grandchildren to attend, yourselves to attend a church, since there is one as well, that would be directly affected by the noise and, much more importantly, by the toxic waste and contamination of the air surrounding the area. If approvals were to be granted, something to the nature of groundwater contamination, traffic pattern changes, most importantly, air pollution, there will be considerable contamination, and it would be an individual fight, an individual lawsuit on behalf of one City of Lancaster resident against every single individual business. It's a David against Goliath fight that you would be setting up by approving this overlay with the express purpose of economic development. There are, to the tune of the acres listed, 5,000 or some odd, a considerable number of similar acreages spread across the city, already zoned to this purpose, not currently in development or use. The best and biggest example is probably Division Street and Avenue H. They already have a recycling plant. It's already clearly zoned to the purpose. It makes no sense why you would want to, and actually makes a lot of sense from a money perspective, but it makes no sense why you'd want to put residents and, more importantly, children in danger for economic development. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate your, folks, I appreciate your interest. This is not an entertainment venue. This is serious business. I know you think it's serious. We certainly do. So please hold your applause. It does no good.
It does actually, sir.
Thank you.
It shows community support.
Paul Ward?
I don't think I have a lot to say, but I'll say a little bit. First off,
Sorry, sir.
Okay, you want me to introduce
If
myself?
you speak to the microphone, then I
All
can
right.
hear you.
Okay, my name is Paul Ward. I've been a resident of Lancaster
Welcome.
for approximately 50-some years.
Welcome.
And welcome to you. Thank you. And in the process, I've been living in this neighborhood of mine, which is on Avenue K and 35th Street area for the last 25 years. And I am kind of definitely concerned about the fact of what you're going to do into that neighborhood. And the lady here, she mentioned them, but she ran them off really fast, and she didn't explain too much what each and every one of them was. So I'm highly concerned about what they are and what they're supposed to do. I started writing them down, but by the time she got finished with the first one, she was already on the fourth one. So I have no idea what they're really trying to do out there. I have heard a little bit about maybe you're doing stuff like solar panel stuff and maybe industry, warehouse. I've heard a few of those, but I'm not 100% sure. And what I'm concerned about is about 20 years ago, we objected to East Side High School being put in there, and everybody got together and opposed it. And then as it went back and forth with arguments, what the city did is they went into a closed session and passed it without anybody like us in here being able to voice our opinion anymore after the fact that they was going to go ahead and put it in. So I'm concerned that that could happen again. So maybe some person would come in and put a big warehouse factory in there, put who knows what in there, and it could be passed without anybody in here really have any objection or any opinion to do whatsoever. And I would like maybe if you could repeat slowly what those businesses could be and what they're comprised of.
Just to let you know, at the end of everyone's comments, staff will summarize what you all have to say and respond.
Okay.
And if we have to repeat it a half a dozen times, we're here as long as it takes.
Okay.
Very good. Thank
I'll
you for
be
your
here too.
comments, sir.
Yep.
Virginia Shields.
Evening, welcome.
Good evening. I've been living at Rancho Tierra del Sol for about 25 years now, and it has been an exquisite experience. We have such a lovely rural atmosphere out there. There's peace in the streets, and the loveliness of the sky and the quiet and all the things that Lancaster would want to see in its neighborhoods if it could, to keep it on a lovely level. I'm opposed to the city's proposal to create this light industrial area right next to our neighborhood. We have all gone to great effort and expense to build this beautiful, upscale, calm, rural-type neighborhood. It's like the things dreams are made of. You look for that home where, you'll be glad to go and be at peace. The noise, traffic, and frenetic activity around a light industrial area would pollute and destroy what we've built. Our property values would plummet because that's why people like it out there. It's quieter and a little more pleasant looking, and our lifetime investments diminish. The atmosphere out where we are is a balm to the human spirit. Lancaster certainly wants to foster neighborhoods such as ours. We are requesting that the light industrial activity be removed from our borders to a location beyond 50th Street East, where it will not damage, or some other location, I'm not aware of what's available, but where this activity will not damage our lovely atmosphere of this unique neighborhood. Let's see. I would also like to point out that this area is already over-impacted by many other establishments. We have Eastside High School on our immediate border. It generates enormous traffic on a J8, Avenue K, and 30th, 35th, and 40th Street East. This traffic is both vehicles and pedestrian, namely young people. The Enterprise Elementary School is also on our border, generating a huge flow of traffic, vehicles, and pedestrian, including children. 40th Street West, as well as Avenue J, are main thoroughfares to a landmark institution in our community. It is the Lancaster Baptist Church mega complex. It houses schools at every level, primary through high school. It also houses the West Coast University. It is the site of a church with thousands of members. Am I supposed to see?
Thank you for
I
your
have
comment.
one more minute.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you so much.
Donald Casper?
Good evening and welcome.
Hey, hello, I'm Don Casper. I've been here 20 years for the rare, threatened, endangered species in the East Antelope Valley. I'm the man who studied them with Museum of Natural History and others. Anytime you're talking about clay pan habitat, which is K and north, you're talking about a number of species that are threatened in those zones, including fairy shrimp habitat and loggerhead shrike, well, that's bird, and Mojave spineflower and Mariposa lily. So anytime you want to wrap rock and develop and constrain Little Rock or Big Rock creeks, you're in those habitats. Now, most of it has not been studied. That has, Avenue H out to Big Rock Creek, I'm the one who's done it. They're common species for the shrimp, but they're there. Okay, anywhere in these drainages has not been studied so far. Now, since you changed the EIR nature from agricultural to industrial, what I wanted to say key today is that 15 years ago, working with Palmdale Water District, I got all their hydrologic maps. U.S. Geological Survey definition of a fault complex is 5 feet or more water table discontinuity. And on the west side of Little Rock Creek, it's 150 feet. So I proposed and sent to U.S. Geological Survey and began a discussion with their chief scientist there for the Department of the Interior, whether this was actually these watersheds are not there by accident, but they are graben structures that is parallel down drop fault blocks connected to the San Andreas. And if they're connected to the San Andreas, which I believe that they are, then they are transverse faults. And therefore, motion on the San Andreas can activate these fault systems. So this was the basis where immediately south of your zone, some years ago, Palmdale was going to put in about 2,000 to 5,000 housing units. And I brought this issue up, and it went through the city council at that time. And it was scrapped because there is a serious problem with liquefaction hazard problems and motion of San Andreas affecting these. Now, how did they get there? It's pretty straightforward. North American Plate rode over the Eastern Pacific Spreading Center. It created the San Andreas. So basically, these spreading centers have offset segments in them as the outflow of lava is differential. So now at this point, then, we have all these transverse complexes connected to San Andreas. So that's my key concern was hazard related to industrial development on this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casper. Next speaker.
Sure. Brenda Rasmussen?
Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Brenda Rasmussen. I've lived in the city for 30 years. I've lived in Rancho Tierra del Sol neighborhood for 13 years now. When I was looking for a property, I was looking for something that was like a rural residential area, but still within the city limits, and that was Rancho Tierra del Sol. There's no street lights, there's no curbs, there's no sidewalk, it's quiet. You can sit outside in the evening and not hear anything but nature around you. If the overlay zone is approved, like the gentleman before said, we'll have to fight every single conditional use permit that comes about. If the zone, I understand the city would like more development. There are a lot of unused parcels in the city, but even if not, and you want to do the east side, if you could move it east to either 50th or 60th Street East, so that any development won't affect our neighborhood. We have a quiet lifestyle, and if anything's built across the street from us, it's just going to increase traffic nonstop. Something like a distribution warehouse would be nonstop traffic all the time. You know, there'd be light pollution. We don't have streetlights right now, and we enjoy it that way. And if any development were to happen across the street from us at 40th Street East, there would be streetlights. Distribution warehouse would be nonstop traffic. I just would prefer that it stayed agricultural in that area, and I don't want to have to come back each time that another conditional use permit, another public hearing to fight for something. I'm happy that you've banned any kind of cannabis facilities in the overlay zone. I appreciate that you did not allow that, but I'm hoping that you will reconsider, or at least where the overlay zone starts, so that it doesn't buffer up right next to our neighborhood at Rancho Tierra del Sol. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Lonnie Hartanto.
Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioner. I've been a resident of Lancaster for the past 19 years. I have been a resident in the Rancho Tierra del Sol for the past 15 years. I've enjoyed living there, and since I moved here, we've had 4 children who are thriving, who are ready to become leaders of this city or of our nation. And my concern is that with the knowledge of you possibly having an ammonia fertilizer manufacturing or a hydrogen battery plant on the east side, on the 40th East, it is very concerning because you cannot smell the pollution, and I don't know the future impact of this pollution on our children. What concerns me is that with the presence of the Eastside High School, our neighborhood has already been burglarized so many times. In the past, we were just a quiet neighborhood. With the opening of the high school and the Enterprise Elementary, our neighborhood is opened up to more people, and we've been burglarized many times, and nobody else is responsible for that, right? Even with the city approval. And nobody knows what manufacturing facilities are going to be placed there. It's not definitely mentioned in the planning that was mentioned earlier. It is sad that we're protecting the Joshua trees, as mentioned on the slide, and ignoring the children's future, the children's health. But the Joshua tree is important to be protected. What about our children? City manager commented that Lancaster Baptist Church, which is what I'm a part of, Lancaster Baptist School, which is the school that my children go to, is the jewel of the city. I ask you to reconsider, knowing that our church is the jewel of the city, to consider your decision to make this neighborhood a light industrial, which could have unforeseen impact on our children's health. Also, one more thing that I need to tell you, have you mailed out notices to all the parents at the Eastside High School District, at the Enterprise School, Lancaster Baptist School? Our neighborhood is just one small portion of that community. There are other parents with children impacted by what you have planned to do in our community. There are 3,000 students, I'm sure, within that vicinity, and most parents would not want our children to be impacted. Would you want your grandchildren or children be impacted by cancer? Well, you know your children could have the potential of being great leaders for our nations that is very much needed these days. We are raising a lot of children there for the future of our nation.
Thank you for your comments.
John Alvarez.
Good evening, sir, and welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Bowes, Commissioners, City staff. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak to you today. I appreciate the job that you do for the city, for the area. My name is John Alvarez. I'm a 37-year resident of Lancaster, California. I'm a Texan, so I retired 7 years ago, and I realized that there was something special here in this city, in this area, for me and my family. Many people would have asked me, said, John, aren't you moving back to Texas? And I said, no, I believe that the good Lord brought me here for a reason, and I believe it's to be a part of Lancaster. And I appreciate everything that you're doing. I've lived in Rancho Tierra del Sol for 19 years. My wife and I built our home there 19 years ago. Actually, last month was 19 years. We built it there. It's on a 1 acre lot. The homes there are all custom homes. They're all, it's a very quiet neighborhood, as many of the speakers before me have said. It's quiet, no street lights, very quiet. We love it. That's why we moved there. And I believe that if this East Side Overlay Project Zone is approved, then it's going to impact my family, families, many of the residents here, they're going to be impacted by it. Many of those that aren't here are going to be impacted by it. East Side High School, Enterprise School, Lancaster Baptist School, West Coast Baptist College, they're all going to be impacted by this. And I believe, and it won't be in a positive nature. I believe that the east side quite often has been looked down upon in the valley, and I'll be the first to tell you that. When we first moved here, people said, don't move the east side, whatever you do. We did, and I'm so thankful that we did. But I know that you guys have a tough job to do. I know that you want to positively impact our valley, and I do too. I believe that with my whole heart. But I believe that if we allow this East Side overlay zone to be right across the street from homes, that it will negatively impact our area. And I believe if you push the zone to eastward about a mile or so, that would give the city plenty of room to still grow. And I believe that we all want what's best for the city, and I believe that doing this would be best for the city. I know that all of my neighbors are against the East Side Overlay Zone. We are too. And we appreciate you taking the time to hear us, and I pray that you will vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Sharon Molnar.
Good evening.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you for explaining it. I've never been at one of these, so I've learned a lot. Anyways, I live on 40th Street facing the overlay area and J8. And I agree with everything everybody said. I love the first guy's analogy of, take an inch, take a mile. And an example that the second guy said about the East Side School was one of the things they said when they were going to put the East Side High School in was that it wouldn't have a sports field, which seems silly, but it was going to be this arts and production performance art school, and so we didn't have to worry about the lights and the noise and whatever. But now 9 months out of the year we get drums all morning long and whatever, and the traffic's horrific, and the city or whoever makes decisions. J8 is a rural road still between the two schools. The growth of the church schools, nothing's been put into the infrastructure of the traffic there. And so the point is, what everyone's already said, so I'm being redundant, is, we don't mind things progressing, and, life goes on, and nobody ever wants it in their backyard. But it has been proven to us who have lived over there for many years now that the follow-through lacks. And I believe, we've already said, yeah, if you want light industry, there's plenty of places in the Antelope Valley for light industry. So it's either going to be solar or eventually a conditional permit for more cannabis. The problem with solar and the east side is dirt and wind. We are inundated. We've been here for other things on wind issues, never resolved. Solar has proven, every solar field that goes in, they always say, oh, we're going to put something down, to mitigate the wind, and, we're going to plant things around them. They're going to be beautiful. It never happens. So I'm assuming that the only customer for this overlay really immediately would be solar, alternative energies of some sort, which are always ugly. They never follow through with trying to even beautify them in any way. So that's my personal concern, along with everything everybody else has said. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Last speaker card, Larry Chappell.
Thank you. Evening, sir, and welcome.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Larry Chappell. I grew up here in the Antelope Valley. I've been living here for 37 years, and I'm a youth pastor at Lancaster Baptist Church. In 2008, my wife and I built our house. We bought a piece of land and we built our house in the Tierra del Sol neighborhood. And we love our neighborhood. And, we have frustration sometimes with our city. Overall, I love our city. I love what you guys do, and I appreciate you taking the time to hear from us tonight. But I got to say, one of the best things about our city is our neighborhood. I love our church family. I love our school. But I love our neighborhood, and I love our neighbors that are here as well. And I've got 3 young girls. We live about 100 yards away from where the overlay begins. And I want to thank you, first of all, for prohibiting the cannabis. That's a big deal to us. But we're still trying to wrap our heads around, which is one of the reasons I'm here tonight, just to hear from you. And so I want to thank you, Cynthia, for your work. And I've seen your name over a lot of documents. We're going to be reading over. There's a lot of data, and I'm just asking for more time. Like the other speakers, we're not opposed to progress. I love the clean and alternative energy, although I'm also skeptical. I used to work for our mayor and got to go with him on some big litigation, so I'm used to big companies saying things that are safe and end up not being safe. And so I just know that the overlay will dramatically change the landscape of where we live right now. And I would just second everything that everyone else has said. The same thing with the Eastside High School. I'm a youth pastor. We have clubs at the Eastside High School. I'm there often. I love the kids that are there, but it does have a negative impact on the road that we live currently. And so for that reason, I'm opposed to the overlay here. I believe it does open the door open for a lot of arguments that were mentioned earlier. And there has been some talk of a buffer, putting some space, and I think that's a great idea. But I just kind of wanted to come and show my face tonight as a homeowner in this community. I love the community, and I just wanted to just voice my opposition to this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do you have any more speakers? None?
No more speakers.
All right, then, thank you.
Sure.
Since the city of Lancaster is the applicant, there's no specific applicant other than staff who represent the city of Lancaster. We as a commissioner, as I mentioned early on, are obliged to administer Section 17 of the municipal code relative to projects. In this particular case, there are no projects proposed. Staff will go through the list again and try to highlight for you how development takes place. I can do it, but I'm going to ask staff to do it since they're the experts, and share with you what the future will be if, in fact, this overlay is approved by the City Council. Our role tonight is to consider the input, review the environmental document, and make a recommendation to the City Council whether they should approve it or not. However, a lot has been said tonight. One of the commentors mentioned, and I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name correctly. We're not when we vote, we don't vote for or against people. We certainly don't vote for or against our friends and neighbors, that's for sure. So we all live here. We all participate in this community for a long time. Some of the members here grew up here, so and even cruised the boulevard in the olden days, right? So, Ms. Campagna, would you address the comments that were made and see if you can highlight them all, please?
Sure. I'll go ahead and start off with the list of uses in the East Side overlay. So first one is research and development, alternative energy uses, building trades and related uses, distribution, food manufacturing. Yeah, of course. Okay. I'll start over. Research and development, alternative energy uses, building trades and related uses, building trade and related uses, trades, Yeah, so it's more like cabinet making, contractor shops, engineers, surveys, landscape materials, those types of professionals in the area, and then they would have their office and their shop in that type of use. So those are building trades. Distribution, food manufacturing, processing, wholesales, and storage. That's one use. Light manufacturing and warehousing. So these uses here would require a conditional use permit, which means that it would go through the public hearing process. Prior to that, staff would go ahead and review the project to make sure it's consistent with the area. We have development standards that would have setbacks, mitigation measures probably would be placed on that project. One thing I would note is that everything would be indoors. There's no outdoor uses really in the overlay zone, so everything would be within the building. This is case by case, so not every project is going to look the same. You know, we look at the different types of uses that are around it, so if it's around a residential, we'll take that in consideration. When staff reviews the projects and deems that it would be compatible and consistent with the code, then we would bring it up to Planning Commission. And with that, there is a public review period. A notice does go out 10 days prior to the public hearing. That gets notified to property owners within, this is rural residential, so 1,500 feet of the proposed projects. It gets posted in the paper. And it is posted around City Hall, the library. Then it goes to Planning Commission, where the public can go ahead and comment on the project, and ultimately Planning Commission would approve or deny the project. So that's the process for these projects. If they do come in, it's case by case, like I said, so not every project's gonna look the same, and we would go ahead and review the surrounding areas for any proposed project that we have.
Go right ahead, Ms. Campagna.
Then I'll go ahead and for the environmental aspect, like I said, this is case by case, and then we would go ahead and review the environmental per project. So if there's anything that the studies show that we would need mitigation measures on, we would go ahead and look at that in a future date. This is just for the overlay. Let's see what else. For light pollution, increase in traffic, that's something that city does review. So we make sure that there's street improvements done for these projects to ensure that it can go ahead and build to the number of traffic that would go to a project. And any new development would have street improvements, and that includes street lights. So that discusses the light pollution. And then, like Chairman Vo said, this is just an approval to City Council, so there is more time, depending on the Commission's decision tonight.
And if I can interject, there were two additional uses that Ms. Campagna missed. There's also alcohol production and contractor storage yard, indoor and outdoor. There's two additional, it's alcohol production, and the second one is contractor storage yard.
So you touched briefly on the environmental document. This particular environmental document serves what purpose that we're considering tonight?
It's reviewing the overall overlay. So it's very hard to determine all of the all of the effects because there's no use. We also have our consultant here, Michael Baker, who can further discuss any of the environmental if you have questions on that.
We may do that. So just to be clear, every project in this area or anywhere else in the city that comes forward at a minimum, requires an environmental consideration and review of some magnitude, depending on the use and location. So, in the foreseeable future, if you had, for instance, a development of 500 acres of whatever, a use, it's likely that depending on the condition of the soil, if it's disturbed or undisturbed, a various level of review, which could include a full-blown environmental impact study, or it could be a mitigated neg deck, right?
That's
or
correct.
It could be exempt. I don't see that happening in this area because, for the most part, it's either former farmland or undeveloped real estate, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So, all right. Alan's here tonight, and maybe he wants to talk to us a little bit about the scope of what the environmental consultant did on this project, particularly in light of some of the comments, loggerhead shrike and all that.
Absolutely. I can do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Alan Ashimine with Michael Baker International, and we are the city's consultant for the environmental impact report. So I will echo everything that Ms. Campagna had noted tonight. In terms of what is before you, it is an EIR, but it is the first step, if this project is approved, in much more environmental review that would occur on a case-by-case basis. So what we have in terms of the EIR tonight is a programmatic review. So very high level, very general, because we don't have a project to analyze. So in terms of the next step, as Cynthia noted, when a project does come online, when an application is submitted, at that point, it'd be a mitigated neg deck. It could be an EIR, biological studies, traffic studies, so on and so forth. So at that point, we would know much more about what the impacts would be. But the intent here tonight is to analyze things at a programmatic level.
So the typical environmental reviews include things like air quality, traffic, impacts on our neighbors and friends, impacts on those either protected or identified species on the ground, which this programmatic EIR before us is basically a screen check, right? It's not a 10-meter site walk, right?
That's correct. So the EIR before us tonight is fully compliant with the California Environmental Quality Act. We did analyze aesthetics. We analyzed air quality, noise, biological resources, cultural resources, the full spectrum of what's covered under the CEQA guidelines. But again, with the limited information we have at this point, there's only so far we can take it. So we've made those conclusions tonight in the document. But again, assuming this project moves forward, as applications come through, that's where we'll see the very detailed biological studies. So we'll have a biologist out there. They'll be surveying the site, mapping the vegetation, taking inventory of any special status species that may occur on that site. There will be an inventory of the noise impacts, proximity to sensitive receptors, how close or how far are residential uses, determining where those noise levels stand in regards to city standards. And the same can be said for air quality, all the modeling, the regional impacts, localized impacts, health risk. So these are all things that are considered in the future when we have a site plan to work with and understand and can do those field studies. But tonight, at this time, that level of analysis is not appropriate or possible.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe other questions?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to take this in small pieces because if not, I'll try to boil the ocean up here. So I look at things. I've worked in some capacity for this great city for better part of 13, 14 years in some capacity. So I'm going to have on my city hat for just a moment because I am a proponent of smart growth for the city. I'm going to step on the other side as a citizen And listening to some of the feedback that we got, and especially on some of the letters, things like toxic waste. And then when you just mentioned that this is something that you'd look at in the future when a project comes down. If I'm a homeowner that has bought property and has built a home in an area that was considered residential at the time that I purchased that said property, and then the city comes in and proposes an overlay, what are we to do with that? I mean, I'm giving you both sides of who I am. I am a citizen of this great city, but also I serve at the pleasure of the citizens in this great city, right? But we've heard a lot of anecdotal information like cancer-causing, toxic waste, et cetera. But at what point do we think it's more feasible to look at that ahead before we just decide to unilaterally just do an overlay? I think it's a fair question. I'm just not sure if it's something that changes everything if we were to move out. I've heard, some of the citizens, their feedback is, did we consider moving out a mile or 2 miles? Has that been considered? And what does that do to the overlay? I mean, is that a better option? Just curious if that's something that we could address. I think it's something that we at least owe an explanation on.
Commissioner Harvey, good points. As we keep mentioning time and time again, there is no project per se to analyze. So the comments about toxic waste it's not fact.
Right, anecdotal, I get it.
Right, it's anecdotal. So, if a project were to come in that's toxic waste, or that's an impact, and we would need to, analyze that and see if it's even a feasible project. In most cases, it probably would not be. Now, the public was given an opportunity to comment early on in the project during the environmental review process, during the scoping meeting of the project. The scoping meeting was the initial conversation and invitation to the community to speak on the project, and then the residents were notified. And the biggest concern and the only concern and the only feedback received really was related to cannabis. And the significant concern about cannabis, and the community asked the city to please exclude cannabis, and we did, and we took that comment to heart. The city's leadership also, we met with various stakeholders, including our partners and stakeholders at the church, and we agreed to eliminate and in fact prohibit cannabis uses anywhere in the overlay. So those conversations were had. No other comments were raised during any of the opportunities to speak on the project.
Okay, that's fair. So when Ms. Campagna listed research and development, alternative energy, food manufacturing, building trades, alternative uses, distribution, light manufacturing, et cetera, was that known at the time? Were those items listed at that time?
That has always been the kind of the guiding vision and the direction from the city council for this project. So those uses were in fact part of the project description when we started developing the CEQA document, the environmental document, the EIR that is before you. All of those uses were taken into consideration.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Comments?
Chairman Vos, I have
Go ahead.
maybe a simple question, and I think I would be glad to answer it. I'm not sure everybody in the audience really understands what we mean when we say this is the East Side overlay for the zone text amendment. Could you simplify it for the audience? I think it might help a little bit because there's a lot of anecdotal conversation about what's going to happen with this. We can put the map back up and look at what historically has happened on these properties, which I can tell you won't continue to happen with the issues we have with water in our area. It's not going to continue to be farmed. So at some point, it's going to be developed, right? So when we're looking at this concept here of this East Side overlay, I think the commissioners here all understand what it is. We've read, there's voluminous materials that have been before us. But if we can just maybe break it down pretty simply on what we mean by this zone text amendment on this East Side overlay with respect to this map, everyone here, our residents, generally, I think between 35th and 40th Street East are the ones who showed up. no one east of 40th, because we all know there's really nobody out there in a residential capacity east of 40th. So when we're looking at the map, when we're looking at what this overlay is, if we can just break it down on what it means if we actually adopt this resolution to send this to the city council for further consideration, I think it might help us make a decision and help our residents understand exactly what it is that we're doing and what it is that we might be approving, if that could be helpful.
Yeah, of course. I'm trying to pull up the vicinity map, but it seems to be just a gray blob. But the overlay is not a rezoning. So it's not rezoning to light industrial or heavy industrial. It's still the R2.5 zone. So you're still going to see residential. If someone wanted to come in with a tentative tract map to subdivide the project, and then, you know, like a KB Homes or Pacific Communities, they would still be able to do it in this overlay. So those uses are still permitted. They probably will come in the future or not, but those are projects that could potentially come. The overlay itself is that it allows more flexibility on the different types of uses that could be in this area. Something that's very similar in the R2.5 permitted use chart is crop production, which is like a light industrial use, and that is a permitted use in our R2.5 zone. So we looked at our code right now and looked at what was similar that we've seen in the east side, or the few projects that we have had. And what we've seen is solar, alternative energy, and then also crop production. So it's not allowing light industrial, it's not a rezone. It's an overlay that potentially could have different types of uses, but still have discretionary review of the commission.
See, if I may, I think that's really important, because if we look at the map, just east of 40th Street here, if a developer came in and wanted to develop it, we're not saying by the adoption of this, or if the city council approves it, that there won't continue to be residential use. It still is a possibility. What we're doing is providing an option for additional development for alternative energy. So we're not excluding the ability for there to continue to be development of homes here.
I guess what I'm hearing is they get that. They're just saying the overlay is opening up the aperture, if you will, for those other things. That's what I'm hearing.
But those other things could still happen by application, though, anyways, correct?
That's correct.
There can be a zoning amendment request made, and we can and it could be changed by an individual application, just like a CUP.
But it's like this is doing it in one swoop, though. Am I hearing that correct, or no? Am I not?
Excuse us, folks. It's our turn. It's our turn. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's our. We're having the discussion.
The public hearing is closed.
Thank you. Sir, if you've had your opportunity, it's our turn. Thank you.
Commissioner Derryberry, just to confirm and clarify, there are uses that currently exist in the RR 2.5. Solar is one of them. There are other quasi-light industrial uses that already exist and are already permissible. This is simply aligning it to some of the other areas and some of the trends, and again, aligning it with the vision of the City Council and their direction to city staff.
So that might be Commissioner Harvey's answer. Is, you know, why are we doing it in one overlay? Because that was the direction of the City Council.
Right. The direction is really identify areas, you know, broader to do the focus is alternative energy, and to really, you know, cut down on greenhouse gas emissions. That's the overall goal for the state. And having said that, a lot of these areas are underutilized. And the vision for this, and the council's vision is that of creating, and the term, as you said it, a one fell swoop is correct, is instead of piecemealing it and doing zone changes, individual zone changes, and creating a kind of a hodgepodge of zoning, is to evaluate it all at once, identify the overlay. It's not a zone change, but it's just an overlay that would accommodate these types of uses.
Understood, but my other question was, was there any consideration to moving further east? Because I heard that a couple of times. Is that outside of the scope of what was requested by council?
That's
The-
not
the-
the application that's before us. The city council has identified the area that area was annexed to the city many years ago.
Agreed, Jim, but that's exactly what I'm asking. So we're going backwards? Was there any consideration or was there any issue when this was first passed down for you all to look at an overlay with this area being further east? Not that you city staff should have looked at it, but was there an opportunity for the city council to give you that direction?
Going further east was not evaluated. We were doing a comprehensive view of this segment of the east side overlay. Now, we will analyze it as we did as part of the EIR. Doesn't mean that development or any of these uses will occur. It's just we've analyzed it and incorporated it into our program EIR. And there are opportunities in that first segment, that in the westernmost portion, that we have spoken to developers on concepts that are more residential in nature. Don't have formal applications, but there is interest to develop a different use in the western portion of it. It's just not formal at this time. So I couldn't share or talk about that because it's not real today, but we do have interest from KB Homes and other residential developers to develop, and there would be a buffer. But again, I can't make that promise because it's not a formal application.
Well, the reality of most opportunities is economically driven.
Correct.
What the city council is recommending is to open up the east side of our community, similar to the north side and the west side, for all sorts of development opportunities. A lot of limiting factors are on this part of our community, just like there are in other parts of our community. Water, adequate streets, power. There's all sorts of limiting factors that applicants would need to consider before an application is ever presented and before it ever gets to staff and then ultimately to us, or just up to the Planning Commission. May not necessarily be all of us at that time. Who knows when? But this land has been within the city's jurisdiction for well over 16, 18 years, I believe, maybe longer. So, as we have said in the past, we don't pick applicants, applicants pick us. In this particular case, it's the city of Lancaster that happens to be the applicant rather than an individual developer. The city is not going to develop this property. The city has no ability to develop. They do not have the financial wherewithal to develop. So it's applicant driven. Does that help?
Another answer that might be helpful is if you could explain the difference. If I'm, let's say, an alternative energy developer, if this is not approved, what efforts would I take to bring it forth for permit versus what happens if this overlay is approved? What difficulty would the developer have and the city have in both situations? So again, the overlay is not approved. Solar developer, alternative energy developer wants to develop something in the overlay district. What hurdles do they have if it's not approved? And what issues does the city have in that situation? And then the alternate.
It's the same process, is it not? It's a conditional use permit for alternative energy?
Yeah, so for solar, it would be a CUP. For other alternative energy uses, it would not be permitted in the zone. So they would have to do a general plan amendment, a zone change, and a CUP for each property or each project in the east side overlay.
Because the ag zone or the A2 zone doesn't delineate other alternative energy uses.
That's correct. It's only solar permitted in the RR 2.5 zones.
Yeah,
With the
it's
CUP.
the only one, right?
Correct.
So for instance, if hydrogen production, for instance, could be a use, I mean, that's apparently the hot ticket lately, right? So without this overlay, then the applicants then would have to apply for, in effect, general plan revision and a zone change for a specific area and piecemeal it rather than a specific overlay, which then allows developers to apply within a broader scope of opportunity.
Well, I understand that, Chairman, but I think that from the city standpoint, it also utilizes and requires considerable additional city resources every time an applicant attempts to do a hydrogen project, or if there's something. So what the overlay is doing is providing a little bit of a streamlined application process to get to the CUP for the developer, correct?
I don't think it streamlines much. It's still a conditional use permit. It's still a full-blown environmental review. It's still all the public noticing. It's still the advertising. It's still the public hearings. And it's still, depending on the decision this commission makes, it's appealable to the city council, and they're the ultimate, as we know, the ultimate arbitrator of any appeal. No matter what we do, our actions can be appealed, and often are. Anything further from you, members? And we have no further speaker cards? All right, then. So, without objection, we'll close the public hearing on this matter. And if you're ready, I'll consider a motion.
I move to recommendation, the Planning Commission adopt Resolution 2318, recommending approval of the City Council, the East Side Overlay Zone Text Amendment, and certification of the Environmental Impact Report for the East Side Overlay and adoption of the findings.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second the motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion, members? None? All right, then. It's been moved and seconded. Please vote. Motion passes 4-2 with one absent. So it is approved. The recommendation will go on to the City Council. And that'll be a published activity at the City Council?
That is correct. The date has not been finalized. Once the item is on the agenda, it will be published in the newspaper.
All right, thank you. So that's likely to be another couple of months out?
Possibly 1 to 2 months.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, folks, for your comments tonight. I'm very hard of hearing, so I didn't hear what he said. We'll take up the next item in a moment. Why don't we take about a 2-minute break here? All right, we're ready? Okay, that concludes our action items this evening. I neglected to introduce our, I won't say new to me, attorney who is sitting with us tonight. So Ms. De La Cruz, would you do the honors?
I would love to. Here with us tonight is Mr. David King. He is an attorney with Best & Krieger, a very well-known and prominent law firm that does a variety of specialties, including land use, CEQA, housing, among others. We are very excited to have Mr. King here tonight, and he has already been an asset thus far. And this is meeting number, technically 1, but he's been behind the scene for a couple of meetings now. So welcome to Mr. King.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
All right. So the assistant director is going to speak to us tonight on announcements.
I get to share a couple of announcements. So just a few things for you. We do already have a lot of items planned for the August and September meetings. So just a heads up, we're trying to balance those out, obviously, so we're not too heavy in one area and not in another. So you'll see that coming forward in the next couple months. Heather and Sandra will be reaching out. We also have items in the November, December timeframe. We'll be reaching out to make sure that we have quorum for some of the items that we're planning to bring forward to the Planning Commission. We're also bringing on a new planning technician. They'll be supporting the department on a part-time basis. Will help us continue to provide that excellent level of service to all of our developers and all of our folks in town. And then last but not least, Lancaster development continues to go strong. We do have a lot of projects that are in the pipeline. We're very excited to bring forward to the commission for approval. And you'll be seeing those, alternative energy and development and just a variety of things that are really exciting coming down the pipeline. So that's all I have.
Ms. Garibay, thank you. And I hope everyone takes their vacation time this year. Ms. Swain, I'm looking your way.
I leave on vacation on Thursday.
Okay, all right, good. We all need to rejuvenate. All right. Members, do we have anything you care to add tonight, any of you? All right. It's time for public business from the floor. This portion of the agenda is offered to the public to speak to us relative to any non-agendized item. If you'd like to speak to us now, you'd need to fill out a speaker's card, give it to the recording secretary, and we'll be happy to listen to you for 3 minutes. Do we have any speakers? in the audience?
No speakers.
None?
No speaker
Okay.
cards.
None? All right, then. So, great thank you to you staff tonight. This was a very dynamic meeting. We heard a lot from a lot of people, and appreciate your response and trying not to be too technical, and it's really challenging because these are complicated issues and become very technical very quickly, right? So, anyway, thank you all. Good work tonight. Thank you. All right, then. We stand adjourned until August 14th, 2023 at 5 p.m. here in this chamber.